And we're now 30 days into the government shutdown, and New York Governor Kathy Hochul has declared a state of emergency due to the expected suspension of federal SNAP benefits on November 1st. Is it a necessary move? Joining us now to discuss is Democratic strategist and former Barack Obama White House official, President Obama, Ashwani Jain, along with Economist and Republican strategist John Jordan. Great to have you both with us. So, New York State will allocate, it appears to be about $65 million in emergency food assistance to provide 40 million meals statewide. John, let's start with you. Is this the right move or the only move, one might say?
Well, yeah, it's the only move that Governor Hochul can make. The Senate Democrats will have another chance, I believe, tonight or tomorrow to vote on this again. Remember, the continuing resolution that would have keep the government funded isn't a Trump budget. It is the Biden era, Biden administration funding levels. So it's not a Republican budget. This is just keeping things as they were under the Biden budget until a deal can be worked out on a lot of the health care details.
Ashwani, Oregon and Virginia taking similar action. Do you see other states following suit? And which party do you think that this is ultimately going to affect more?
Well, all of this is a result of the Republican shutdown. Democrats tried recently to pass a standalone bill to keep SNAP funded so that families will not go hungry. Republicans blocked it. Democrats have also tried to raise the minimum wage so that people won't need food stamps or SNAP in the first place. Republicans blocked it. And Trump still refuses to use emergency funds that are meant for exactly this. Look, we always hear that there's no money for these types of programs, and yet somehow there's always money for President Trump's golf trips or for ICE bonuses. The problem is not the worker getting $6 a day in food stamps. It is the corporations that are paying wages so low that employees need them in the first place. If we can afford to subsidize billionaires and fund wars, we can afford this. And until the federal government reopens, states are going to have to use their emergency funding like we're seeing right now in New York and other places.
Now, Vice President J.D. Vance earlier today commenting on the government shutdown, describing why he believes Democrats' demands are unreasonable and hurting everyday Americans. Here's what the vice president had to say.
You don't reward hostage taking. If Democrats want to talk about health care policy, let's talk about health care policy. If they want to talk about tax policy, let's talk about tax policy. They don't get to come in here and say, you give us everything we want, or we're going to shut down the government and not pay our pilots and not pay our air traffic controllers.
Ashwani, how do you respond to what the vice president was saying there?
I mean, I think it's really rich considering the fact that Republicans literally control the White House, the House, and the Senate. Secondly, Republicans somehow found a way to override the 60-vote rule in the Senate to confirm over 100 of Trump's nominees. So they clearly can do it again to reopen the government, but they won't because these are the same folks who have spent decades mocking the federal government and trying to gut the very programs that now they claim to care about because they're seeing their constituents hurt.
John?
Yeah. Well, first of all, what the Democrats are demanding here, in terms of keeping the budget, the government open again at Biden era funding levels, they're demanding $1.5 trillion in spending, in Medicare spending, continuing the COVID era Biden subsidies for Obamacare or the ACA. So what they're asking for is a whole lot. We can negotiate in good faith on a lot of this stuff. And a lot of Republicans want to work on some of this stuff. Something will get done. Let's get this done. The problem is that the responsible Democrats are being held hostage by the far left who need the optical show of seeing that they're doing something to the Republicans. Let's sit down. Let's work this out. We can continue operating right now under Biden era funding levels until we get the healthcare issues resolved, which everybody wants to do. The Democrats are the ones holding this up. We just need 5 Democrat votes here. It's not a big lift.
Lastly, I do want to pivot to the military. President Trump has now ordered the Pentagon to begin conducting nuclear weapons tests again. Ashwani, given other countries' active testing programs, is it fair for the United States to restart testing on an equal footing?
No, look, President Trump's nuclear testing program is not leadership, it's dangerous. It drags America back into an arms race we have not needed for decades, while also draining resources away from schools, healthcare, and also real security. Look, bold defense is not about bigger bombs, it's about stronger alliances and diplomacy. But this fits with Trump's entire pattern of failed foreign policy, insulting and abandoning our allies, pulling out of partnerships like the World Health Organization, escalating tensions with Iran, or even getting played by both Putin and Netanyahu. Trump is clearly making us weaker and not safer, and this recent stunt just proves that again.
Okay, so Ashwani, I actually know something about this. I've served as a naval officer. I'm an expert in nuclear weapons fabrications and treaties pertaining to this. No. So the U.S. signed there was a test ban treaty in 1996. We haven't tested a nuclear weapon since 1992. Nuclear weapons are not something you just put on a shelf and hope for 40 years later it works. Now, we're not looking at major, this is not a big expense here. Even by the DOE, Department of Energy, actually manages our nuclear weapons stockpile. But we're talking about testing a lot of these components. And to the extent that there actually is a warhead detonation test, that would be an underground, and that's testing the smaller, lower yield weapons on which there isn't a lot of data. But this is basically testing a lot of the conventional components, because you need a lot of conventional explosives actually to ignite a nuclear reaction, be it a fission weapon for a regular lower yield atomic bomb or a fusion reaction for a hydrogen bomb. So this is actually not that big a deal. We're not going to be testing them in the atmosphere above, or where people can see it. We're not going to be laying mushrooms everywhere. This is a Russian attempt to try to change the subject off of Ukraine, to get us to relax sanctions and focus more on bilateral Cold War era nuclear weapons treaties. This is a Russian tactic to obfuscate the real issues in Ukraine. Now, as to diplomacy, I just saw President Trump do 3 days in Asia. I just saw countries, I just saw him do trade deals. I just saw countries commit to investing money in the United States. I see NATO increasing its defense expenditures and relieving the U.S. taxpayer of that burden. I see the Europeans walking back everything they laughed at President Trump about 5 years ago. So we live in different worlds.
Yep. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. Ashwani Jain, John Jordan, really appreciate the discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.